Is love a battlefield? Is a princess a pirate? Could a slave be a saint? The scent of salt and spices hung heavy in the air, a phantom echo of a world far removed from the muddy lanes of Beaucaire. It wasn't a world of knights in shining armor, not really. It was a world stitched together from fragments of dreams, whispers of faraway lands, and a healthy dose of delightful, chaotic confusion. Let's talk about Nicolette, shall we? Because she wasn't your typical heroine. She was a walking, talking, slightly bewildered paradox, a woman born under a Saracen moon and stubbornly refusing to stay put. Imagine, if you will, a young girl snatched from a caravan, a child of the desert, raised on tales of shimmering oases and fierce warriors. She learned to ride before she could walk, to speak in riddles before she could form a proper sentence. Then, a twist of fate, a kidnapping, a baptism, a bewildering exchange of names, and suddenly she's a Christian princess, a reluctant guest in a French court, desperately trying to navigate the treacherous currents of etiquette and expectations. And don't even get me started on her wardrobe. It wasn't just silks and jewels, it was a carefully curated collection of contradictions. A tunic here, a cloak there, a shirt and breeches that seemed utterly at odds with the prescribed attire of a noblewoman. She wasn't trying to be outrageous, not exactly. It was more like she was perpetually caught between two worlds, two identities, two very different sets of rules. Let's be honest, Aucassin, the man she was relentlessly pursuing, wasn't exactly the epitome of medieval romance. He was a local lord, a bit of a grump, prone to fits of pique and utterly incapable of appreciating Nicolette's unique brand of chaos. He wanted a dutiful wife, a quiet companion, someone who would embroider tapestries and produce heirs. Nicolette, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of restless energy, a traveler, a warrior in her own right, though she rarely admitted it, a woman who seemed to belong nowhere and everyone at once. Their courtship was, to put it mildly, unconventional. It involved a stolen kiss, a desperate escape, and a series of increasingly absurd misunderstandings. He'd try to impress her with grand gestures, a lavish banquet, a noble steed, and she'd respond with a mischievous grin and a sudden urge to run off and join a traveling troupe of performers. She was usually passive, one scholar noted, a rather clinical observation that completely missed the point. It wasn't about passivity, it was about a deliberate refusal to conform. Consider the episode in Torlor, a bizarre kingdom ruled by a pregnant king and a queen who commanded armies. It's a place where knights fought with eggs and cheese, where logic took a holiday, and where Nicolette, for a brief, glorious moment, seemed to find a strange sort of belonging. She was a slave, a jongleur, a princess, a shifting mosaic of identities, a living embodiment of the Chantifable's central theme, the destabilizing power of difference. And then there's the matter of her name. Nicolette, a French name but derived from Asia Minor, a land steeped in ancient history and exotic lore. Aucassin, a more familiar name but with roots tracing back to the Arabic world. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a deliberate blurring of boundaries, a refusal to be neatly categorized. They were two halves of a whole, two sides of the same Mediterranean coin. But Nicolette's transgressions weren't just about personal preference or romantic entanglement. They were rooted in a deeper cultural anxiety, a fear of disruption, of anything that threatened the established order. The medieval world wasn't always a welcoming place for those who didn't fit in, particularly those who challenged traditional gender roles or religious boundaries. Think about the whispers surrounding sodomy, a word that carried a heavy weight of moral judgment and social condemnation. Men who engaged in same-sex acts were often labeled as monstrous, as threats to the fabric of society. And interestingly, women's perceived passivity, their inability to participate in public life, their dependence on male authority, was also viewed as a destabilizing force. Women's incapacity manifested itself in social practices, from the ecclesiastic ban on female ordination to the legal impediments to female office holding, one historian observed. Nicolette, with her restless energy and her refusal to be confined by societal expectations, embodied both of these anxieties. She was a woman who defied the rules, who challenged the norms, who refused to be defined by her gender or her origins. and that in the eyes of some made her a dangerous figure. Let's not forget the belle Sarrasine, the iconic figure who appeared in countless chansons de geste. She was a beautiful, virile Muslim woman, a symbol of exotic allure and forbidden desire. Nicolette, with her Saracen heritage and her unconventional behavior, bore a striking resemblance to this archetype. She was a reminder that the boundaries between cultures were fluid, that identities could be fluid, that desire could transcend religious and ethnic divisions. But the Chantafable wasn't just a celebration of difference, it was also a reflection of the fears and anxieties that underpinned it. The conflict between Beaucaire and Bouguere's de Valence, a clash between a traditional lord and a heretical outsider, mirrored the broader tensions of the medieval world. Bouguere's, it turns out, had a rather suggestive name connected to the idea of boggor, a term associated with heresy and, disturbingly, sodomy. And the Albigensian Crusade, a brutal conflict that ravaged southern France, cast a long shadow over the story. The Crusade was, in part, a religious war, a fight to eradicate heresy, but it was also a political struggle, a battle for power and control. The Chantafable, with its focus on cultural difference and its portrayal of a destabilizing world, can be seen as a reflection of these anxieties. The journey to Carthage, a city that existed only in the imagination of the medieval storyteller, was more than just a geographical one. It was a symbolic journey, a quest for identity, a desperate attempt to find a place to belong. Nicolette's repeated departures, her constant movement between different lands and identities, mirrored the broader sense of displacement and uncertainty that characterized the medieval world. She was a refugee, a traveler, a woman who had no home. And in her restlessness, in her refusal to settle down, she represented something far more profound: the enduring power of the human spirit to resist conformity, to challenge boundaries, and to embrace the messy, complicated beauty of difference. So the next time you encounter Nicolette, don't just see a princess in disguise. See a rebel, a wanderer, a woman who dared to defy expectations and forge her own path. Because let's be honest, isn't that what love is really about? A refusal to be contained, a willingness to embrace the unexpected, and a celebration of all the beautiful, chaotic contradictions that make us who we are. And what about that final, baffling scene, Nicolette, disguised as a jongleur, escaping from Carthage? It's a moment of pure, unadulterated absurdity, a reminder that the Chantafable wasn't trying to offer a straightforward moral lesson. It was simply telling a story filled with intrigue, adventure, and a healthy dose of delightful mayhem. Is a princess a pirate? Perhaps. Is love a battlefield? Absolutely. And is Nicolette the most wonderfully complicated heroine in medieval literature, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to defy expectations and embrace the beautiful, messy truth of being different? You bet she is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm suddenly feeling the urge to pack a bag and set off on a grand adventure. Where to, you ask? Well, that's entirely up to you. But I have a feeling it might involve a tunic, a cloak, and a very large dose of mischief.